So I've been waiting for a day like this to be able to finally test this out. We're going to be going over the science of sunscreen. Sunscreen works in two different ways. One, it absorbs light rays, and another, it deflects it. So what we're going to try today is I have 6 different compounds here that we're going to try out. Okay, so we're going to have our control box here. We're not going to put anything in there and just kind of see how my skin reacts to the sunlight. Then we have 10% zinc. So, like I said, that 10% is going to go on there. 20% zinc is going to go right here. And then we have zinc and water. That one's this mixture right there. And it was just enough water to get it into a spreadable paste. And then just regular lotion. The Hawaiian Tropic SPF 30. And this is just going to be the zinc powder. So we're going to let these sit on my sad, super pale and red legs. They're not red yet, but they're going to be. And got our setup right over there. Give it 2 hours. And I'll check in every few minutes and give you updates on how it's looking. Okay, we are all applied. So we've got the control, the 10% zinc, 20% zinc, and then this is the zinc and water mixture. Then we have just the lotion, the Hawaiian Tropic Sunscreen SPF 30, and then just the dry zinc powder. Obviously, it's harder to spread on, but I try to do equal amounts of everything, and you can tell that the lotion has already pretty much absorbed into my skin. The Hawaiian Tropic is almost done absorbing in, and that white cast is almost gone. But the other one's the white cast is still there, which is what zinc oxide is supposed to do. So far we're doing good, and now I'll check back in a few minutes. Okay, we're just over 10 minutes in, and this is what we are looking at. So our control is good. We've still got some moisture on the zinc 10% and the zinc 20%. The zinc and water has obviously dried out, and even just by flexing my leg muscle, you can see that the powder has kind of ended up on the blanket, so it's not staying nearly as well. The lotion has some glare to it, so you still got the oils and whatever in there. The sunscreen has that greasy look that it normally does, and no change on the powder zinc, and that's about 10-15 minutes in. Let's see if you can see that. So these ones are starting to dry up. That one's flaked a little bit. So yeah, there's an hour. Okay, so we have reached 2 hours now. I'm sweating up a storm, and this is what we're looking at. I did use some alcohol to get the marker off of my leg because it was smearing from the lotion, so I just took that off. But other than that, the rest is looking about the same. The 20% and the 10% are pretty dried out. If I rub my finger on it, you can see that that's just gonna come right off. But with the water, it is not. So we will see what worked best. Okay, so I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty shocked at the initial results. Now that my legs are out of the sun, I can definitely feel that they're burnt. And I didn't think 2 hours was gonna be totally enough to see how effective they would all be, but that was the 20%. That was the 10%. That was the zinc and water. That was lotion, the SPF 30 Hawaiian Pacific, and then just the zinc powder on its own, which actually did do some a fairly good job for just being the powder. But and then there's the tan line, well, burn line. So this will be interesting to see kind of how that develops over the next couple hours. Okay, let's go over some of the science behind all of this. So there are two types of UV rays that we're going to talk about. So there are three types, but UVC rays are completely absorbed by the atmosphere. So we're going to talk about UVA and UVB rays. So the science behind UVA rays is that they are smaller waves, 320 to 400 nanometers, and those penetrate all the way through the top two layers of your skin down to the dermis. So what that does is UVA rays actually are known to cause the most aging and pigmentation. There is more information to these, and they're going to be linked in the description and my references. And then UVB rays. So 90% of UVB rays are absorbed in the atmosphere, and they penetrate to the dermis, or the epidermis, so the first two layers of the skin. So they're 290 to 320 nanometers. They're higher energy than UVA rays, and that is what causes sunburn. That is what caused my poor legs to turn super, super red. So we've talked about our UVA and our UVB rays, and now we're going to talk about our physical sunscreens versus chemical sunscreens. I've referred to a couple of them throughout the experiment, but we're going to actually really talk about what they are now. So physical sunscreens are mineral or inorganic sunscreens, but it's really just zinc in a lot of cases, or titanium that's been oxidized. So we have zinc oxide and titanium dioxide that are used as physical sunscreens. So what they do is it scatters those UV rays before it can actually reach your skin. And so that's kind of what I saw on my left leg when I had that 10% zinc and the 20% zinc mixture, which were mixed with lotion, which did a okay job at blocking out the sun, way better than not using any sunscreen, as well as mixing it with water, which I did find was very effective. I think mixing it with the lotion kind of ruined some of the effects, because that section that had the lotion on it did get burnt probably worse than the rest of my legs, as well as just the zinc powder. Rubbing the powder on my skin even would have been way more effective than nothing at all. So that's our physical sunscreens. And then the other thing is chemical sunscreens. So these have another name. They're also organic sunscreens, which in my book doesn't mean a whole lot. But so I personally have heard of a few different things that are in chemical sunscreens, and one is avobenzone, octisalate, and oxybenzone. So I think oxybenzone kind of falls under the category of avobenzone, but these actually are chemicals that absorb the UV rays. There have been some adverse feelings towards chemical sunscreens because they do contain chemicals, and that is getting absorbed into the skin. With physical sunscreens, there's basically no absorption, and so it's just acting like a physical block. Where with chemicals, there is more reaction taking place and absorption into the skin. And so oxybenzone has been studied, and there is a fear that it can cause some hormone disruption, but it has been proven safe for use. And in my book, even that sounds better than a miserable sunburn like I've got going on. Here's the sunscreen that I used on that SPF 30 section. So this is the Hawaiian Tropic Sport Sunscreen Lotion. I've used this brand and I have liked it, but now I can actually tell that it is quite effective, especially for long exposure. So the active ingredients in this are avobenzone, like we talked about, homosalate, and octocrylene. Okay, I did get some sun exposure paper. Okay, so this is the Sun Art paper kit that I got. And essentially you put an object on top of the plastic and lay it out in the sun, rinse the paper with water, and then as it dries it should develop like an old school photograph. So this is our unused paper from that kit. White on one side, blue on the other. You put the object on top of the blue over the plastic, and it should essentially block the rays of the sun that will make this change color. These aren't completely dry yet, but I did a little experiment with a half sheet here. Put dry zinc powder on the top section, 10% lotion and zinc mixture on the second, the Hawaiian Tropic on the third, and then just plain lotion on the last section there. I'm not totally sure how reliable these results are. You can tell that it's pretty discolored. And it's still drying, so I'm not totally sure, but that 10% zinc mixture did change the color of the paper immediately upon putting it on, even before it was in the sun. So I'm not sure just how effective that was, but it was an interesting experiment. And I did it next to this one, which was the same compounds, but instead of putting it directly on the paper, I put it on the plastic and then put the plastic over top. So you can see from both of them that the Hawaiian Tropic, which was right there, did have some blockage, and the little splotches where the dry zinc powder was on the plastic, it didn't really adhere. So it didn't work quite the same. But I also did this under a UV lamp instead of out in the sun, so I think that might have skewed the results a little as well. So the other papers that are out now are in the sun, and we're gonna go grab them. Paper here we have a zinc mixed with water because the zinc powder itself won't adhere, regular lotion, and then the 10% zinc mixture, and we're gonna see how the sunlight will affect that. I put it on top of the plastic and we'll see if it's effective. We are in direct sunlight. These papers that I now have out in the sun has been out here for 7 minutes, but on the instructions it says to leave it for 1 to 5 minutes. So you can tell that paper has completely changed color. It has been exposed for long enough to the sun, so it's almost completely white. So we're just going to take it in here and rinse that paper and see what we come with in the end. Okay, so we just took the paper off of our clipboard here. You can tell where it was under the clamp, and this was the 10% lotion and zinc mixture. Yes, this was the plain lotion, and this was the zinc and water. So we'll get it rinsed and then come check back in. All right, just got the paper wet. Got it flipped backwards here, so I'm just gonna turn that around. So that's the zinc and water, and the zinc 10% mixture, and then the lotion. Just gonna let that dry out, and hopefully we get something cool to show for it. This is the Hawaiian Tropic SPF 30. We're gonna put that out in direct sunlight. Turn that guy around so it's all the way in the sun. And come back in 7 minutes, just like we did with the other ones. Yeah, that looks about like I thought it would. All right, let's take her in. I think there was a little bit of water on the clipboard, and so that transferred over, and now that's where those dark spots are. But you can tell that it does look pretty streaky. I'm thinking just where that white cast was where it deflected the most light, or blocked the most light, but that it wasn't truly effective in blocking the sun from getting through this paper. So we'll give it a rinse, we'll put it next to the other one, and then we'll come back. Here we had this paper that the sunscreen was on top of the that plastic. I'm not seeing much. You can faintly see the outline of the heart, and it's still a little wet, but not effective. And then this was our other sheet here. I'm not totally sure I loved this experiment, but this was the zinc and water, so you can definitely tell that it was more effective. All in all, I think this was a pretty interesting experiment, and the papers just taught me, I don't think it was necessarily about the UV light that was getting through, but more of just the sun exposure, the light exposure in general, and that zinc creates a heavy-duty film, so it was effective for that. It just deflects the sun really well, and was very good at protecting the paper compared to the other substances from the sun, working as a physical block. It also did a great job on my skin mixed with the water and just the plain powder. Those were probably the least burnt areas aside from the Hawaiian tropic sunscreen. So I'm very impressed with the results. I think that oxidation does play a huge role in this, especially because probably zinc itself, without being oxidized in titanium, would not be an effective sun protectant without being oxidized. So it's really interesting to see the difference that oxidation can make in a chemical compound and its properties. I'm very impressed with this experiment, and it definitely will have me thinking a lot more about chemical sunscreen and how that works, and I may be looking more into that in the future. The 10% zinc compound is about what you would find in an SPF 15 sunscreen, and then 20% zinc compounds are usually what you would find in about SPF 30 or higher. So yeah, very interesting experiment. I am a little bit in pain and impressed with the results. So I will probably do a follow-up in like a week and put that video up as well to see how we are recovering and what has worked the best to help heal this painful sunburn. Oxidation, very interesting, and how zinc mixed with water could be possibly more effective than zinc on its own. So there's multiple chemical properties that could be explored here. I am not a professional chemist, so I will definitely be working a little more to understand these processes. If you want to learn more or read the sources that I read to get a better understanding on sunscreen, UV rays, and how they all work, the links are in the description below. Thank you for watching my video, and use your sunscreen.